The Los Angeles Lakers are heading into the new season with a ton of hype, but also with one major lingering issue from last year: the bench scoring. Let's not sugarcoat it. The Lakers were dead last in the NBA in bench points per game. And in a league where depth makes the difference between a playoff run and an early exit, that's not just a red flag. That's a whole banner. But there's a lot to unpack here, and honestly, it's not all doom and gloom. In fact, there are some real signs of life coming off that Lakers bench, if the coaching staff plays it right, and if the young guys take the steps they need to take. Now, imagine a scenario where Rui Hachimura and Austin Reeves come off the bench. That alone could flip this entire conversation. Both of them are capable scorers. They can create their own shots, and they've got the type of poise that's rare in role players. Rui is a mid-range killer, and Reeves has shown flashes of being a legitimate secondary playmaker. If you slot them as the core of your second unit, you suddenly have a bench that can maintain offensive pressure instead of giving up leads. But of course, that's the dream version. The reality is Austin Reeves is probably sticking in the starting lineup, and Rui, depending on how things shake out, might be the one asked to lead the reserves. And that comes with its own set of risks. We've seen it before. When Rui is not part of the starting five, he tends to disengage. It's not about ego, it's more about rhythm and confidence. Some players need that starter's rhythm to stay locked in. But the truth is the Lakers are going to need Rui to embrace that bench role because his scoring ability is crucial. He's one of the few guys on this roster who can give you a reliable 12 to 15 points a night without needing a ton of touches or plays run for him. And if Jake LaRavia develops the way many think he can, there's your 1-2 punch off the bench right there. LaRavia is still figuring things out, but he's got the potential to be a solid two-way player. If both of those guys can give you a combined 25 to 30 points a night, that changes everything. And then you sprinkle in the others: Marcus Smart, Gabe Vincent, maybe Nick Smith Jr. if he gets some run during the season. Suddenly, you're not talking about the worst bench in the league anymore. You're looking at a second unit with scoring balance, defensive grit, and a couple of guys who can swing a quarter in your favor. But again, this all hinges on how Darvin Ham sets the rotation and who steps up when it matters. Now, let's talk starters because this ties into everything. Luka Doncic is the engine. Period. And the one thing we know about Luka is that he loves to cook early in games. The guy comes out firing, taking almost half of his shots in the first quarter alone. That's why it's so important to pair him with the right starting lineup. You give him a strong defensive backbone so that when he drops 20 in the first, you're not only up by 6 or 7, you're up by 15. That's where guys like Marcus Smart and Jared Vanderbilt come in. They bring that grit, that edge. They're not going to wow you with stats, but they're going to win possessions. And over the course of a season, those possessions matter. Think about how many times last year Luka went nuclear in the first quarter, and the team still couldn't build a big enough lead. That's not a Luka problem. That's a team construction problem. If you can match his offensive explosions with actual defensive stops, that's when you start putting teams away early. That's when you save LeBron's legs. That's when you control games instead of chasing them. But on the flip side, what happens when Luka isn't firing? Every scorer has off nights. That's when you need your defense to hold the line. Because injecting offense is a lot easier than scrambling for defense after you're already in a hole. If the defense can keep the game close, you can make subtle offensive adjustments, bring in a spark plug, run a few new sets, and regain momentum. But if you're down 15 early because the defense is non-existent, it's game over. Now, back to the bench. Realistically, Rui might not start, which means he's got to become that guy off the bench. And if Jake LaRavia can complement him, that's a solid duo. Rui can give you 13 points. LaRavia, if he takes that leap, could give you 10 to 12. Add in Nick Smith Jr., who the Lakers just signed on a two-way deal, and you start to see the puzzle forming. Now, Smith isn't going to come in and dominate right away. He's still young. But this is a guy who averaged 10 points last season on a bad Charlotte team. And in his rookie year, shot over 43% from deep, sure, on limited attempts, but the stroke is there. If he can bump that efficiency back up, say 37 to 38% from deep on 4 or 5 attempts per game, and give you anywhere between 10 and 15 points in spurts, that's massive. And when you consider the reality of a long NBA season, with injuries, trades, and rotations constantly shifting, there's a real chance we see Smith step into a legit sixth-man role down the line. And here's where things get really interesting. Say the Lakers go after a guy like Andrew Wiggins. You're probably doing a 2-for-1 or 3-for-1 type deal, which means you're opening up a roster spot. If Rui is part of that deal, and ideally you'd keep him, then Smith could be your next man up. He becomes your scoring option off the bench. And while he's not a guy you want to hand the keys to right away, his scoring instincts and ability to play both on and off the ball make him a valuable piece, especially in a system built around stars like Luka and LeBron. Now imagine this second unit. Smith at the 1, Dalton Connect at the 2, LaRavia at the 3, Rui, if still on a roster, at the 4, and Jackson Hayes at the 5. That's a second unit that can score in a variety of ways. Transition, pick and roll, catch and shoot, and you've got length and athleticism to switch defensively. That's not just patchwork. That's a bench with an identity. But there's still a question mark at the 3-and-D wing spot. The Lakers probably need one more guy there. But the question is, do you chase a high-level starter like Andrew Wiggins, or do you settle for a more natural fit like Matisse Thybulle or Haywood Highsmith? The answer might depend on usage. Because let's be real, Wiggins is at his best when he can self-create and be the second-best player on the floor. But on a team with Luka and LeBron, how often is he really going to have the ball in those situations? How often will he get to attack mismatches or take over stretches of the game? That's why a simpler fit might make more sense. A guy who defends his tail off, hits open threes, and doesn't need plays drawn for him. Someone who just plugs in and plays. And maybe, just maybe, Jake LaRavia can become that guy. Maybe he develops into a legit two-way wing and earns a starting role. If that happens, then your bench situation changes again. Now you're relying even more on Rui. And if he's gone in a trade, now you really need someone like Nick Smith Jr. to step up. But let's say you keep Connect. Now you've got Smith Jr., Connect, LaRavia, Rui, or whoever replaces him, and Hayes. That's a unit that could average 30 to 35 points a night. That's without even factoring in contributions from Vanderbilt, Smart, or whoever else trickles in. You're suddenly not top-heavy anymore. You're balanced. And that changes the ceiling of this Lakers team entirely. And here's where the conversation around balance becomes really important, because last season the Lakers were dangerously front-loaded. All the offensive firepower came from the starting unit. And once those guys sat down, the energy dipped, the production fell off a cliff, and it became a game of survival until the starters checked back in. That's just not sustainable, especially over an 82-game season where you're managing veteran legs like LeBron's and high-usage stars like Luka. And that's why depth scoring is not just a luxury. It's a necessity if the Lakers want to be more than a regular season highlight reel. Nick Smith Jr. is a fascinating piece in this puzzle, because he represents the kind of low-risk, high-reward player every team wants stashed away on a two-way deal. You're not counting on him to carry anything right away, but if he hits, he could be a real difference maker. He's not your traditional floor general, and he's a bit undersized for a two-guard, but his wingspan, quickness, and natural scoring ability make up for some of those concerns. If the Lakers are patient and develop him properly, he could step into that Lou Williams-type role. The microwave scorer who comes in, changes the tempo, and steals momentum with back-to-back buckets. And that kind of role is perfect alongside a guy like Luka, who draws so much defensive attention. Smith won't be expected to run the show. He'll be expected to take advantage of open space and weak side rotations. The same logic applies to Jake LaRavia. There's still a lot of untapped potential there. He was a bit raw when he entered the league, but you can see flashes, the catch-and-shoot ability, the court awareness, the way he moves without the ball. If he puts it all together, he could be more than just a rotation guy. He could be a solid two-way contributor, maybe even play his way into a starting spot if the Lakers decide to go smaller or more versatile with their lineups. That's especially useful when you consider that there's still a question mark around the 3 spot. If you can't land a top-tier wing via trade, developing someone like LaRavia might be your best bet. And speaking of development, let's not forget Gabe Vincent. He had a rough go last season, but a lot of that came down to injuries and inconsistency in minutes. When he's healthy and in rhythm, he's a solid role player who could defend at the point of attack and knock down threes. Before his injury issues, he was shooting nearly 38% from beyond the arc and had real moments in the playoffs with Miami. If he can rediscover that form and carve out a role in the second unit, that's another reliable piece who doesn't need the ball in his hands to be effective. The front office is clearly focused on assembling a group of guys who can fill roles, adapt to different matchups, and provide optionality for the coaching staff. But what they haven't done, at least not yet, is find that clear-cut scoring leader for the second unit. The guy who can stabilize the offense when Luka or LeBron are on the bench. Maybe it's Rui. Maybe it becomes Connect. Maybe Nick Smith Jr. forces the issue. But right now, that's the biggest question facing the Lakers. Because in the postseason, when rotations tighten and defenses lock in, your bench either gives you an edge or becomes a liability. And here's the thing. That gap between being a top-heavy offensive team and being a complete team is not as wide as it seems. If 3 or 4 of these bench guys make that leap, even small improvements, suddenly you're looking at a Lakers team that can overwhelm opponents in waves, that can rest stars without watching leads evaporate, that can actually win those non-Luka, non-LeBron minutes. And that's everything. Now let's touch on the rotation flexibility. The Lakers have more lineup combinations than ever before. They can go big with Hayes and Vanderbilt. They can go small with Rui at the 4 and LaRavia at the 3. They can load up on shooting with Connect, Smith, and Vincent, or they can go defensive-heavy with Smart, Vanderbilt, and maybe even a guy like Thibault if they make that kind of move. That kind of flexibility gives them a real advantage over the course of a long season where matchups, injuries, and game flow matter. It also gives Darvin Ham the ability to experiment early in the season without sacrificing wins. You can see what lineups work. You can test whether Nick Smith Jr. can handle minutes against starting caliber defenders. You can see if Jake LaRavia is ready to guard wings at a high level. You can give Dalton Connect a green light and see if he could be your designated scorer off the bench. These aren't pipe dreams. These are real possibilities based on the makeup of this roster. And if any one of those experiments pays off, it increases your trade flexibility. A guy like Connect playing well means you're less desperate at the wing. Vincent rediscovering his shot makes you less likely to chase a backup point guard. If Smith Jr. looks like he's ready for real NBA minutes, maybe you can afford to move on from another young guard to trade. That's how teams create value, by developing internally, so they don't have to overspend externally. Before we continue, we ask that you leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any exclusive Lakers updates. Moving on, the basketball world is buzzing with whispers that could reshape the entire NBA landscape. Kevin Durant is rumored to be on his way to the Los Angeles Lakers. Nothing has been made official, and no front office has spoken publicly, but the chatter has grown too loud to ignore. League insiders are hinting at backroom negotiations. Cryptic social media posts have only fueled speculation, and fans in Los Angeles are already dreaming of purple and gold jerseys with Durant on the back. The idea of Durant joining the Lakers feels almost surreal. A player of his caliber, still among the most lethal scorers in the game, aligning with LeBron James and Anthony Davis could form a trio that echoes the great dynasties of NBA history. The rumors suggest Durant has been intrigued by the chance to compete alongside LeBron in what might be the twilight years of his legendary career. Meanwhile, Davis's presence as a defensive anchor provides the perfect balance to Durant's offensive brilliance. Skeptics argue this could just be smoke, an off-season distraction built on wishful thinking. After all, Durant has never been shy about carving his own path, sometimes in unexpected directions. Yet sources close to players around the league insist the conversations are real. What remains unclear is how the Lakers would make the deal work, financially and logistically, given their current roster and salary cap constraints. Still, when superstars want to play together, the NBA has shown us time and again that rules can bend. Lakers fans are already buzzing outside Crypto.com arena, some claiming this would mark the franchise's biggest coup since landing LeBron himself. Others are more cautious, remembering how past super team experiments have sometimes crumbled under the weight of expectation. But if Durant does choose Los Angeles, the league would be forced to take notice. Every matchup would be a spectacle, every playoff series a potential classic. For now, it remains a rumor, a tantalizing what-if that hangs over the league like storm clouds before the downpour. Durant in purple and gold, perhaps fantasy today, but in the NBA, fantasies have a strange way of becoming reality. Stay informed exclusively about Los Angeles Lakers news. Subscribe to our channel and hit the like button to keep receiving daily updates. Also, share your opinion on the news in the comments, as your contribution is crucial for the Lakers. Stay tuned for the next video.